In accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of George L. McCary to construct a three-car garage over the existing driveway at 23 Old Town Road, Walpole. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. A public hearing on the above matter will be held in room 112, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street on October 9th, 2019, beginning at 7:15. All interested persons are requested to be present. Consider hearing was continued tonight, and we have a letter from the
No,
applicant.
we don't have a continuance yet. We actually, is someone here for 23 Old Town Road? Because, okay, they are here. Because we had not heard anything from Old Town Road. So I didn't know if you guys were showing up at all tonight. Didn't know if they were showing up. Hadn't heard a word.
I have revised drawings based on a conversation I had with Landis.
Okay, representing the applicant is who?
Bruce Wilson.
Okay, you need to start by going over there
Right down
and
there.
introducing yourself.
Actually, I got one, and then you asked to have the wetlands updated, so I had Russell go ahead.
Okay. Or we can, whatever.
I haven't looked at any of this.
Yeah.
The planning board is in receipt of your request for comments for the above referenced filing. Please be advised there are no planning comments at this time.
So I don't think there's any new comments since the continued public hearing, Al. Yeah, there's none. This is a continued public hearing. So at the last hearing, we had asked, I had gone out and take a look at the site, and there was an area of wetlands that hadn't been delineated recently. There was some work that had occurred around the shed and the wall that wasn't shown on the plan, and we had asked for some revisions and for them to address those issues. So that seems to be what is being presented tonight, except generally have these come into our office before the hearings.
Okay, representing the applicant.
Hi, I'm Bruce Wilson with GW Site Solutions. I apologize for the tardiness of the plans. It was based on a survey that was done over the weekend here to update everything. Originally, I had gotten extremely busy, and they had another consultant come on, which they've decided to come back to me and beg me to come in and finish the work, even though I'm straight out crazy busy, but I was able to accommodate them. I had Russell Waldron, the original wetland guy, go out and refresh the flags so that the flags that are on the plan today are what's on the ground now. I've topoed the property. It now shows the swimming pool, the retaining wall that's there, and the new locations of the flags. This was originally Jay DiRenzo's property, and there was an old plan that was utilized to permit the pool, but this was a little bit bigger project now by adding the garage here, so we've got a fully updated survey now as of this weekend. We're proposing to do a 24 by 48 garage addition to the right-hand side of the house. You can see the existing bituminous driveway that's there, and the garage would actually sit on what's existing disturbed or an existing asphalt driveway there. There is a small amount of driveway that would be added to make the last bay on the garage there that's demarked with a little small triangle area there right next to where you can see the word siltation barrier. The wall today comes over to about the left rear corner of the shed. It's the intent to continue the wall at the top of the bank to come around so that we can keep any of the project from getting into the isolated wetland that's there. The project currently is disturbed right to the top of the bank. It does encroach upon what would be considered the 25-foot buffer, but that was work that Jay had done and they continue to want to utilize that space that's there. The garage itself will match the elevation of the existing garages there to keep the project from getting into the isolated. I'm showing a siltation barrier, which is a straw wattle or a compost with a what do you call it, siltation or construction fence that would go along the top of the existing bank that's there. If you go out to the site, you'll see that there's some construction debris that's off on the edge of the driveway here, which is the intent is to get a dumpster in there. Based upon your approval, the shed would be removed as part of this project, and then that area there would be loomed and seeded inside the retaining wall. There'll be a wrought iron fence that's installed along the top of the wall once it's complete. And then, they would keep anything. The wall is about 1.5 feet high out of the ground, so none of the product can migrate into the wetland areas that are there. If the board has any other questions, I think I've addressed most of Landis's concerns.
There.
Okay.
Look at this one. Okay.
It's your turn, Emily.
It's my turn. Okay. So I see that you have continued the wall and the shed. You're going to remove the shed?
That's correct. The shed that's there is fairly old and will no longer serve its purpose once the garage is constructed. They'll be able to put, right now it's housing all of the pool chemicals and such for the pool, but once the garage is there, then the shed can be taken down.
Okay. What I'm trying to look at is the plan that was approved originally from the Conservation Commission for the pool. That I don't think it included the work in.
Right. The original plan for the pool had shown the old fence that was on the property, and as part of the project, George had gone in and pulled the fence out and put the retaining wall in.
Right, so they did work within the 25-foot no alteration area that wasn't approved under the original plan, and now you're asking the commission to approve it?
Actually, I think the wall went up to that 25-foot, so that, and the wall replaced the existing fence that was there at the top of the bank. I don't believe they encroached. If anything, we're slightly up gradient of where the old fence used to be.
The wall is closer to the house than the fence to us.
Okay, so I have a plan here that shows the pool and the shed and no work in the 25-foot no alteration area. And now there's the wall you're proposing in the no alteration area.
Oh, adjacent to where the garage is, right? Originally, I mean, the garage was an afterthought and part of the new filing.
And that's where some work is already.
And that's all previously disturbed area right to the top of the bank.
Now the wall is up to the garage. It's up to the shed. It didn't
I know, but that wasn't approved.
Oh.
It was work that was done in violation without being approved by the Conservation Commission. So, this is the plan that I have for the pool and the siltation barrier and the shed. Now, all this area in right here, is where your wall is going to continue, and it's all work within the 25-foot no alteration area. So,
But that area has it's a disturbed area right to the top of the bank that Jay Dorenzo had done several years ago.
You're saying the previous owner had done?
Yeah, the previous owner had disturbed right to the edge of the top of bank that's there.
So that plot plan you have kind of doesn't reflect reality. It's like this is kind of very old. Goes back to Jay Dorenzo when he was.
Well, we're just discussing the way it is. It's up to the commission.
Yeah.
Just because there was a violation by a past owner a while ago doesn't necessarily mean that it continues. So that I'm just pointing that out.
Anything else, members?
No, like I said, this just came in tonight, so I haven't really had a chance to look at it all. So, you know.
It's, how many years ago was this wetland line originally?
You know, the original house was built in 1996, and I
Okay.
bought the house in 2007.
So the question is about the wetland line.
The original
The
wetland line was,
Wait a minute.
yeah.
Wait a minute. The wetland line today has not been visited
That's
by
what we
the
asked.
commission
Yeah, no.
to verify that that's correct. Okay, so we're not assuming that that wetland line is correct at this point, because nobody has verified it at this point in time. A wetland line is good for 3 years from the time it was agreed upon.
which was several years ago.
And that's
That's
a long
why
time
we had
ago,
Russell go out
so
there.
therefore, any new line has to be verified. Okay, so therefore, we're not equipped to deal with part of this project today because the wetland line has not been verified by our agent or a third party that sometimes we require. In this case, it's a pretty small wetland line, and therefore Landis is probably able to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I would
the issue
recommend-
is that we should have had this information a couple of weeks ago to give our agent the opportunity to verify that. And since it's all of a sudden it's here tonight, the letter that I was about to read was asking for more time because you hadn't submitted anything.
That was
So-
old. That was
So
old.
therefore, I'm not equipped to vote on a project that we haven't verified the wetland line. Okay, that's only one issue. Okay, the other issue is you are disturbing inside the no disturb area, and we haven't agreed to that. So now you're showing new work in the no disturb area over what somebody else did in violation. So this isn't a clean, cut and dried project that we can just glance at and approve. You know, it's going to be a little more complicated than that. I think we have to come to some terms on the violations within the 25-foot no disturb zone. And sometimes we have, in a hardship case, done something along that line, but we require some kind of compensation on the site for this area that we're losing to protection of the wetland. Some people realize it or not, the 25-foot area around a wetland, a buffer zone, provides protection for the quality of water going into the wetland. It provides habitat for the creatures that live in a wetland and spend at least half of their life outside the wetland. So there's reasons for us to provide this 25-foot no disturb area and protect it. It isn't a cut and dry thing that we just say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. That's not appropriate. The fact that there's a shed and part of a wall already in the area where it shouldn't be, maybe that has to be removed. We'll have to have some kind of, Landis will have to go and look at this area and see what we want to do about that. So I would like to hear more about this garage and how we can have that and the additional pavement that's requested, and how that can be done in such a way as to protect the wetland and the no disturb area. Because certainly having a garage with vehicles and the chemicals and everything that goes with a car, and we all have a car and we all have the chemicals there, and that sometimes they leak on the pavement and sometimes it washes where we don't want it. Okay, so those are things that we have to take into consideration here. What's that?
I agree with the things Al has been saying. And, however, I'll say one thing in support of the project. Removing that shed and getting those pool chemicals out of the 25-foot buffer zone, that's a real plus, because that's something that's really not good, that the chemicals are currently
Yes, no,
stored there.
there was some thought in taking the shed out and continuing the retaining wall, so that the retaining wall will act as a protection, or a layer of protection, so that nothing gets in there. I mean, if Landis goes out there and she'd prefer to have the wall come even further, we're open to that. And then they mentioned something about replication. The whole area to the right side of the driveway out in the front there, we could put some sort of a conservation restriction, so that whole area were to offset the area that was disturbed or whatever there, and then we could put some vegetation or some types of plants or something in there, so that it would have some type of a wildlife credit or whatever. When Landis does come out there, she'll notice that the area that's in that area is disturbed now, and has no real value of something to the wetlands or any biological growth there. So that we want to try to, like I said, create an area that would be, better apt to take care of any lizards or frogs or whatever. The little area that's there is about a 7,600 square foot isolated wetland or isolated land subject to flooding. Under the Act, it's not protected, but under your bylaw, we realize that it's an area that the board has some sort of concerns and wants to protect. So that we're open to working with the board in coming up with a solution. Unfortunately, he's caught the tail end of something a former developer had disturbed without permission. And we're trying to, make a better solution to, keeping anything from getting down into the wetlands. That was why he thought taking the fence out and putting the retaining wall, the wall on the upland side is a good 1.5 feet out of the ground, so that, it's going to keep anything from getting down into the wetland areas. And then that wall there will have they'll drill in and put a wrought iron fence on it, so that, it will keep anything from getting over there, or anything that might blow through the yard down into the wetlands as well. So it adds an extra, permanent fence type of, buffer as well. We're more than welcome to have any of the board members meet out on site and go over it, or I can meet Landis or George or Hamid will, be glad to meet with Landis out there.
And I believe I heard you say the pool chemicals would be stored in the new
The
garage.
pool chemicals will be moved into the
Yeah.
garage,
Yeah.
which would be outside that 25-foot buffer.
Okay.
Plus one thing here, we bought the house like that extra land here, so we were parking there. So now, like, if you are worried about leaking from cars, it's better to be leak in a closed garage than leaking outside and ruin the environment.
Yeah.
So it's like we are parking there. This is where we're using that.
And I mean, when we're out there, if you feel that that continuing the retaining wall to any length, wherever you would like it to end, we're open to that.
Yeah, I would say I'd be happy to meet you out there after the last hearing that someone actually attended, and there's been at least one continued hearing where nobody attended. I went out there, and if you've had the house for how many years?
I bought the house 2007.
Okay, so what I observed was recently cut vegetation. In 7 years, vegetation can pretty much grow back. So the area that I was concerned near the shed and adjacent to the wetlands and the construction debris that was down there was recent. It wasn't from 7 years ago. It was recent cutting of vegetation, and it may have been an educational thing that you didn't understand, and I perfectly understand that. A lot of new homeowners don't understand where wetlands are and where buffer zones are and what's protected and what's not. But the alteration that occurred, it was ongoing and recent. So I think what we need to do is, I'd be happy to go out there and meet you and explain what should remain untouched and what can be used and where sort of the boundary is. I think there's plenty of room out there to build a garage. I think there was actually proposal to build a garage by the previous owner, and it was kind of tilted a different way. So it's something that's been discussed in the past. So just wanted to say that because it's what I observed was, and the pictures that I just passed around. It was recent alteration. It wasn't 7 years ago.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, just echoing what Al said, that we can't really comment on this until the wetland line was established and verified, and we don't generally approve work within the 25-foot, and you're going to the corner, 25 foot to the corner, so you can't even walk around because you'd be in the 25 foot. So until we establish or verify the wetlands line, we can't comment, we can't do anything on this. So you're proposing work within the 25, which we don't typically allow, so again, we'll have to have this all kind of squared away and the wetland line verified before we can even discuss this any further.
Okay,
Okay,
Betsy?
yeah, so I have two comments and a question. So, one comment is if a retaining wall does end up getting built, usually we have some sort of detail on the plan about it. So that's another reason that this can't be, concluded tonight, that's for sure. There are a lot of things on the list that prevent that. I was going to also say that a tilted garage or a garage at an angle can look really great. It adds kind of an interesting look to it. And I was thinking the same thing, and then Landis mentioned it. It might be worthwhile to see what the previous owner was thinking about if they had some sort of project that had a slightly different configuration for the garage.
I just want to be sure that the commission knows that the garage is proposed to go on top of the existing driveway that's there, so that we aren't taking any impervious and making more impervious, that the garage would actually sit on the footprint of the existing driveway.
Well, okay, that's my third question. Having just put in a garage myself in the last 5 years, can you put a 3-car garage on a slab in Walpole? We had to dig one massive foundation for that thing.
You have to have what do you call it, a frost wall, and then the slab goes in.
Okay, it might be interesting to just chat with the building inspector, because I mean, if putting on a slab, I don't know if that's going to go. I don't know if he's going to go along with that.
It would be a 4-foot frost wall, and then the slab can be placed.
Oh, so you are going to dig down?
They're going to have to they're going to have to take out the driveway and put a frost wall around the where the walls would go for the garage, and then the slab for the garage would be poured inside.
Okay, good. Then my follow-up question is, when I had my little 2-car garage made that way, there was just mounds of dirt everywhere, and I'm nowhere near a wetland. So that's another thing. If you're building a garage that close, we would need to see some careful consideration
Sure,
of how that was going to happen. Yeah, because mounds of dirt come out of even a garage.
I mean, we can have it loaded on truck and taken off-site as it's excavated, if that's your concern.
It's one of them, yeah. Okay, so yeah. All right, so things to think about when you come back. That's it.
And as my partner here says, we need a detail of this wall.
Sure, that's simple enough. I mean, it's
what
basically
kind of plan?
it's going to match up with the existing wall that's there. I'll go out, take some measurements, and put a detail together for you.
And well, one of the issues that I see, you have given the builder the choice of a straw wattle or a compost sock. Well, there's a heck of a big difference between the two. Straw wattles so lightweight the wind can blow them away. A compost sock is much more effective. I don't believe in.
I mean, the detail that's here shows compost.
I don't believe
can take out-
in making them equal value in this position. So we will have to
If
have
it's
a
your
better-
preference for the compost sock, we will take off the words compost, but the detail that's on there is for a compost sock with stakes so that it won't move or migrate.
But we don't want to give the contractor the option. It's to be a
Simple enough.
compost sock. They are heavy and they stay where they're put. Once you stake them there, they're going to be there. All right, so it looks to me like we have to listen to some people from the neighborhood, give your name and address, and keep the comments to the environmental issues. Anybody?
And there might not be anyone from the neighborhood.
No? Okay.
Oh, yeah, oh, sorry. Oh, okay, good.
My name is Brad Nijak, N-I-Z-I-A-K. I'm at 32 Old Town Road. This is my wife Elizabeth. And we certainly support the project that George is doing. He's a good neighbor.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah?
Yeah, Pat DeFrancisco, 36 Old Town Road, and, yeah, I would support this project.
You know, that's rather unusual.
Check 33 Starlight, we support it as well. Lisa Phelan, 23 Crosswoods, I support it as well.
That's very unusual.
Yeah, it's very
Usually
unusual.
everybody's in opposition.
I highly recommend that you come out and see the level of work that's gone into the project. It's quite impressive.
Okay, so we will have to continue this until our next meeting to give the engineer and Landis a chance to look at the site together. And
You know why I didn't think there were any neighbors? Because everyone was smiling. I mean, usually if there's a bunch of abutters in the room, they're ready to go, you know, as far as like, what?
They may be here for the next hearing.
Okay. Okay, all right. But anyway, it's a cheerful bunch.
There's a lot of work on that end of town.
Okay, so you want to continue the hearing to March 11th?
that's the next available date?
Yep.
You have a particular time?
So do you think you can have the material done by March 11th?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm back in the States again.
Okay, you're back on the
I'm back
on the
in the
job.
United States again. I was away. I had the unfortunate. We had 2 deaths in the family. My uncle, and then 3 weeks later, after returning, his wife died of a broken heart, I guess you would say. So we had to go back down and start all over again with another service. So
Well, you're fortunate you could get back into the country.
So our last hearing scheduled is at 7:30. So you want to put it 7:45?
7:45, yeah. I'll accept a motion for that.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if you want to give me a call, I'd be happy to meet you out there and go
sure,
over.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's continued to 7:45
Aye.
on March 11th.
Okay. See you in 2 weeks.
Building on the roadway. Yeah, they have expand across.
Oh, yeah.
Must be road A.
does the board have any objection to the shed being taken down? He's gonna bring a dumpster in to get rid of the construction debris, and we were waiting to do that so that we don't have to bring a dumpster in more than once. If we were to, bring the dumpster in, get rid of the debris, and then take the shed at the same time.
I don't have a problem.
I don't have a problem with it, as long as the debris is going away from the wetlands.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the whole idea, is to clean up so nothing will get down in there.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
that works.
Those are weird looking lots.
It is.
Okay.
Jigsaw puzzle. Yeah, really.
We ready?
Yes.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice hereby given of the intent of the Chakialasari Family Irrevocable Trust to convert a driveway into a road for 4 single-family house lots and appurtenances at 32 Starlight Drive, Walpole. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. A public hearing on the above matter will be held in the Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on February 26, 2020, beginning at 7:05 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Okay. Health Department. The Board of Health, at its February 4th, 2020 meeting, voted unanimously that they have a long-standing stance on protecting the wetlands and water sources, as well as protecting residents from human vector-borne illnesses. The Board recommends that the applicant perform an assessment of the wetlands to depict what type of wetlands are present on the property to assure proper mosquito preventive measures are in place. The Board urges the applicant, as well as the future homeowners, to adopt a standard best practices for mosquito migration and work with Norfolk County Mosquito Control for spraying and standing water treatments, institute regular cleaning of gutters, and provide proper grading of buffer zone areas in order to prevent low points that draw in cold water. DEP. This project has been assigned the following number, 315-1219.
So for 109, this development here.
The Mass DEP Wetland Change Database indicates there's a wetland change either on or near the project site. Wetland change number 307-5. Please investigate the status of this wetland change, whether it was authorized by a local order of conditions. The wetland change area, as shown on the Mass GIS website,
Yeah, it would be.
the maps under the subfolder Mass DEP Wetland and Wetland Change Areas.
What does that mean?
DEP did a
study.
study quite a while ago and looked at areas where wetlands were filled in or changed.
They took aerial photos one year, I think it was 93, and then 10 years later they came back and did a photo of the same area, and they compared, and on the later photo map they determined there were areas in all the towns around here, not just Norwood or Walpole, and sent a notice to have these investigated. So they're pointing out that that issue needs to be looked at. And this is
Okay, yeah.
writing of this morning, please remember that the Secretary of State's
You don't have to
office-
read that.
No, no, yeah.
I think it's probably just this here, that the parcel is up to date with the taxes. Yep.
Okay, it's up to date with its taxes. Zoning Board of Appeals is not currently in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for this project. Therefore, have no comments.
And so this is the letter from the town engineer, and he did a review of the stormwater system, so it's kind of extensive. Did you get a copy of the?
I have received a copy of it.
Yes.
We'll work on addressing that.
So I don't know, I honestly don't think you have to read the whole thing, but it's up to you, Al. His comments start here, and then they go.
A couple of pages.
A couple of pages. I mean, they're still working with the planning board and ironing out some of the issues with the project in general. Which I
And
think
this
Dave
letter
be
will
able to
become
explain.
part of the record.
Yes. I think that's it.
Okay, that's all the relevant comments. Representing the applicant.
Dan American with Legacy Engineering. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We've submitted a notice of intent for work at 32 Starlight Drive. This is an existing 11.2 acre lot. It was part of the Pine Brook subdivision, which goes back to the mid to late 90s. We designed that project back then. Presently, there's one existing single-family home, and this was the subject of a previous order of conditions issued by this board. They have an existing 18-foot wide driveway that comes in through here. We have a wetlands area here that is partially on this property, partially on the adjacent properties on Crosswoods Path. There's a culvert consisting of two 12-inch pipes under the driveway. Then there's a wetland area here that kind of flows off into the adjacent properties on Old Town Road. On the property, there's just this wetland area and this wetland area here. I just want to say I'll look into the DEP comment, but we did this subdivision back in the late 90s, and these are the wetlands that were on the property at that time. There's an additional wetland off-site. This is on town property, Adams Farm. This is part of Adams Farm, out in this area, but there were no other wetlands back in the late 90s, on the site. So I'll investigate that, but I'm not aware of anything else.
So there's a small little wetlands at the far corner of the property,
Here?
but on the property,
On the property?
that comes up on our GIS, and it's not there anymore. It may be that that's what it is.
It could be. I mean, I'll tell you, I have the old plans. I'm happy to submit them. There were no other wetlands in this area on the back of this
Right.
lot
Yeah,
at
it's a
that
very
time.
small
And
little
they
area.
weren't shown when you guys issued an order of conditions for this property, for the development of the property. They
Right.
weren't reflected on those plans either.
Yeah,
So,
but it might be that's what they're picking up.
yeah, it could be. So, what's there today is the existing house, the existing driveway, house, pool, septic system, little turnaround for the driveway, and that's it. This is grass. There's an existing gravel driveway down in this area. There's a gravel area in the back. This is all woods. This area here is all woods. We have some rock outcrops in here and up in here. What the applicant is looking to do is to basically turn this into a four-lot subdivision. So one would contain the existing home, so 3 new lots. So a total of 4. And what we are looking to do, what we're asking the planning board to do is basically make this a private way, not a full-blown road construction. Keep it as a private way. We're trying to use the existing 18-foot wide paved driveway as the road. I don't know if the planning board's going to allow that. We had an initial meeting with them. They said that they might be willing to do that.
Dan, what sheet are you on? If you could just.
I'm on sheet C5. What we would do is, what we'd propose you to do is to leave the existing driveway here all the way up to this point. And we would create a road layout around that existing driveway, and it would become a private street. That would create frontage for these new lots. And then we would take we have an existing driveway that comes through here and has a turnaround right around here, what we'd do is we'd rebuild this part of the existing driveway within a new road and just basically make it very similar, but extend it down a little further, move the turnaround a little further, and have a cul-de-sac there, and that would become our road. And we would have, a new house lot here, a new house lot here, and a new house lot here. One of the advantages to this is there's no stormwater management for the existing site, for the existing driveway or the existing house. So as part of this process, we would have to implement new stormwater management for the whole place. So we're proposing to do stormwater treatment in here with a small stormwater basin right here at the mouth of the driveway to pick up this runoff that's coming down. And then a larger basin here along the side that would pick up basically all of this runoff that's coming down the driveway here. To this point, that would all get routed into a new stormwater basin here that would discharge through a level spreader out into the adjacent woodlands. And then we have an underground infiltration system here, which basically is going to be dedicated more or less to the impervious area associated with this future house. Now, we're not putting house developments before you today. Any work for future house developments, driveways, houses that might involve work in a buffer zone is not being requested at this time. This is just for the subdivision infrastructure for the road, which is the existing driveway, and the new stormwater management systems. We also have another small stormwater basin back here, which again is going to be exclusively dedicated to mitigating runoff from this future house and driveway. The house and driveway are not before you now, but with the stormwater management is, because we have to provide a comprehensive stormwater management design for the whole subdivision, which anticipates what the house developments and the lot developments will look like.
So it includes your infiltration calculations.
Yep, includes all the infiltration calculations. We provided a stormwater report that addresses, the recharge requirements, the peak rate mitigation requirements, the volume mitigation requirements. So this is a little bit odd because we do have to show the planning board what a design would look like if they weren't willing to allow the existing driveway to be used as the private road. So the process that they go through is they make us show what would a full-blown road construction look like, and then they go through and make sure that it could comply with all the different regulations, which it can. And then they say, okay, if you can do that, now we're willing to entertain the discussion of waivers, for a private way, a narrower road, no sidewalk, all of those kinds of conversations. So there is a sheet in here that shows the full construction of the road. That is not what we're looking to build. It's ultimately going to be up to the planning board to decide whether or not that's acceptable to them. They have done something similar in the past. Boulder Trail, which is around the corner, is a similar type of a thing. It's a private road, no sidewalk, narrower construction of pavement. So it's good because you have less pavement, less impervious area, less disturbance, and where we have an existing driveway that's in very good condition, there's really no need to disturb all of this, if we don't have to. So one of the things I think the planning board will be looking to hear from the Conservation Commission is, your thoughts on, the proposal to create the private way with the existing driveway versus building a full road like Starlight Drive is with a sidewalk and 26 feet of paving and all that jazz. If we were to do that, this existing stream crossing would have to get a little bit wider, so there'd be a little bit of wetlands filling involved, depending on, typically in that situation, the planning board would normally allow us to, bring our sidewalks in right next to the pavement and build retaining walls and minimize that footprint. But I think they will want to hear from you on the topic of, which of these options you prefer. And I would think you'd probably prefer what we're looking to do. But that would be for you to decide. There is no work in the 25-foot buffer, again, except for if the planning board makes us rebuild this road. There obviously would be work at this crossing in the 25-foot buffer. But aside from that, if they allow us to keep the existing driveway as the future private road, the only thing that we need to do is bring a water main in. So there'd be a need to come in here and dig a trench along this side of the driveway and bring a water main, an 8-inch water main, back to the back of the property. Other than that, we're not going to disturb the existing driveway. questions, comments?
Okay, Landis?
So I intended to go out there and, review the wetlands line prior to the public hearing, but I was sick for a few days, so I wasn't able to do that. I think you're probably going to be continuing it anyways.
Yeah, we haven't been before the planning board yet. Our first meeting is next week, so we're going to ask you to continue us to your second meeting in March.
Okay, so that still needs to be done. I still need to go out there and review the wetlands line. And then, like I said, the town engineer did do some review of the stormwater management, and I looked at it just briefly. So the pre-treatment for the infiltration basins, the large one and the small one.
First defense units.
Okay.
Yeah, proprietary treatment.
Proprietary treatments.
And we designed the drainage system for the full road construction. And if the planning board allows us, waivers, whether it's in the configuration of the existing driveway or some different configuration, I don't have any intention of reducing the drainage design. So I designed the drainage system for the full road construction with the full width of pavement and a sidewalk and all of that. If they grant us waivers to allow a private way and reduce construction of whatever form it takes, I'm not changing the drainage design. So I anticipate it'll be over-designed.
Well, I personally don't have any problem with reducing basins if it means not, I don't know if that's a treat area or not, but if it's reducing the area of treat area that you have to cut down in order to put a basin, I'm all for actually reducing the size of the basin. So
It would be
you might
pretty
want to consider
small
that.
reduction, but I could look at it. I certainly could look at it.
Yeah, especially for such a small area. So just so I understand, so you need to show the planning board that you can still construct the road even though they may not make you construct the full width of the roadway.
Two-step process. What they don't want is they don't want somebody who can't meet all the dimensional requirements of the regulations coming in and proposing a subdivision. So they want you to kind of prove on paper that you can provide the road width and the sidewalk and the corner rounding and all of that stuff. And then once you demonstrate that, they'll consider waivers.
So if you were to construct the full width of the roadway, you would have to alter some wetlands, do some wetlands fill. And there's it's a stream at the culvert.
Yeah, it's an intermittent stream.
So you'd have to meet the stream crossing standards.
Yeah, we would have to look at that if they wanted us to go that way. Yeah.
Right. So it would be pretty different than what you're showing here, as far as coming back to the commission. But
well, what we would have to do is we'd have to provide you with more detail on.
Well, you'd have to show the fill. You'd have to show the replication. So the planning board doesn't have to. They don't have to know all that. That you can do that when you're saying that you can fully build out the road.
That's up to them.
Okay.
That's up to them. It seems kind of pointless to go and show all that work that's never presumably going to be built.
I know. In one other instant, there's another instant where they were putting a small road with a cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sac did go into the wetlands, and it turned out, they couldn't actually put that there because of the wetlands.
Because that was work in, I think I'm familiar
And then,
with that.
so the other thing that just comes to mind is in that subdivision, if they've already met the 5,000 square feet of wetlands fill, because I know there was fill for the roadway and there was a replication, so I don't know if you could even fill in any more wetlands.
I'll have to go back and look at that, back from the original approvals. I'll have to go back and look.
So, I think obviously the better scenario would be to use the driveway and not have any more wetlands fills. And then just one other thing is the basins that are on individual lots. So you want the order to be approved under the road construction for those, but then you're going to file individual lots.
Correct.
Notice intents for the lots.
Yep.
And I think probably you might have to do some more test pits out there for the basins.
Carl has asked that we take a few more test pits. The test pits were witnessed by the engineering department, but he has asked for a few more test pits in the larger basin.
Yeah, because both the engineering department and conservation, you know, when we go by the stormwater management handbook, that there should be at least 2 in the larger basins in the basin where you're actually infiltrating.
Yeah, we can go dig some more, no problem.
Those are the only comments I have now. Probably there may be other comments regarding the stormwater management later,
Sure.
next round.
So I noticed on a few pages earlier, some of the proposed layouts for septic systems are surrounded by rock outcroppings, and I'm wondering if you anticipate any problems passing perk tests
We've
per
already perked
Title
all the
V.
lots.
It's already
It's already done.
successful on that?
Yep. Yeah, we have 2 perk tests on every lot.
Okay.
Any questions at this time?
So is there, for something like this, a homeowners association that
Yes.
maintains the infrastructure?
Yep, there'll be a homeowners association that will maintain the assuming it's a private road, right, assuming the planning board lets us go that way, there'll be a homeowners association to maintain the road and all the associated infrastructure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. First of all, the pipes under the road, under the driveway at the present time, have they been examined to see their condition?
I've looked at them, they look in good condition.
They're in good condition, okay. So now with the change all around, are they going to be adequate size, or do they have to be redone and larger pipes in place? That's the first thing. Second thing is, as I drive around town in 2019 and 2020, I see more and more people, not just kids, but adults, and in some cases older adults, jogging or walking along roads that have no sidewalks. And every time I see a guy, and I see an older gentleman on North Street. North Street is very narrow, a country road, and I feel this guy is taking his life in his hands. So when I see a project come forward with no sidewalk at all, even though it's a private roadway, are all the people in these 5 houses going to be happy and want the responsibility about hitting somebody that's walking on this roadway because there's no sidewalk? So why does that concern me? Well, because if you have to make it the layout wider to accommodate a sidewalk at a later date, that means that this wetland crossing partway down the road will change, and we get involved again. So I want to make sure that everybody involved is happy with not having a place to walk or jog on this roadway, because it does lead someplace else, and people do jog and run for recreation purposes, for health purposes. So I don't want to just toss that out and say, well, we don't need a sidewalk. Maybe right now the people that are involved don't need one, but what about the next generation that comes along? So I want that to be considered when you're proposing this. Is that going to be safe for the people that live here and their children or grandchildren? And it does have an effect on the wetlands and the water quality coming off these properties. So that's why I get concerned on private driveway. I have nothing against private driveways. I think in some cases it's the best way. The less pavement we can have, the better we like it from an environmental point of view. And, at this point in time, we're paying much more attention to the environment because of so-called climate change. Some people don't recognize it. I don't place blame, but I do recognize that things have changed substantially, and this winter is certainly a sample of climate changing somewhat. We'll get a couple of cold spells, and we'll get some snow again, but things are changing, and we don't know what the entire change is going to be. So I don't want to close the book on some of these things. So I look forward to seeing an updated plan as a result of the planning board and see where we go.
Okay.
Now, if you're a resident nearby and want to make a comment, keep the comments to environmental issues, not traffic issues, or where the wildlife is going to go, or things like that. Okay? Anybody?
I'm Mary Ann Jordan. I'm at 28 Crosswoods Path, and my property backs up to the part of this where the houses are going to be. And I think I'm just here to gain information on what's going to be happening and how it affects my property.
Ross Talley, on the 26 Crosswoods Path. I probably have the most skin in the game here because I have the lowest elevation in my backyard, which is a good portion of the year almost not used because the water level is so high. And so I'm really concerned about...
Where are you on this?
26 Crosswoods.
I noticed.
Oh, here?
Crosswoods is up here.
Okay, yep.
Some of your butters were off, I think. The labeling on your plans.
Oh, well, this is 26 and 28 Crosswoods Path.
Okay.
I designed all those houses.
So you're 20.
I'm 28. He's 26.
Yeah, so it's the drainage is a big issue, and I know that their outfit did the engineering for the house next to mine as well, which turned out to be a huge issue because their front yard is actually a fair bit higher than my yard. And I suffered really like Niagara Falls during heavy rainfalls, and my backyard turned into the side yard turned into a full pond. Fortunately, the owner at the time was really, we worked well together. He was a good guy. He put in quite a big buffer zone of trees and mulch and everything. But I feel like I don't have a lot of leeway if there's a disruption in the drainage, so I just want to make sure that conservation has the opportunity to come out and look at it and make sure that they think that the plan is okay for the water to not get up after my backyard is.
Sounds like you want to make sure that this project doesn't make matters worse.
Yeah, my little one would like a skating pond in the backyard, but I'm not going to be up for that.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would just say from a big picture standpoint for conservation, if you're looking at the first case that you viewed and then this case, and you're talking about disrupting nature and frogs and lizards, not accepting the first case and accepting this case and carbon footprint and climate change and cutting down trees and building houses and all of that just doesn't seem like it's logical to me from a conservation standpoint.
Okay. I understand you.
Well, we can also say something more, that
Justify
we're really restricted by the laws and bylaws. We actually can't overstep those and come up with our own favorite rules about it. We might think, oh, here's a great piece of land. We'd rather not see 4 houses on it. We'd rather see 1. But that's actually not our jurisdiction to do that. That's why it's going to the planning board. Maybe another board has to look at it, but everything is all very subdivided, and we're pretty strict on the bylaws and laws. So we can't say, oh, here's your 11-acre lot, you're not allowed to develop it. We actually cannot do that at all.
No, but I'm hearing the reasoning behind all of it is because of
If I can just clarify, because you were here
I'm just
for the
trying to
first
understand.
hearing, sure. So there's two things. There's the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and Regulations, which is a book about this big, and the applicant has to meet the stormwater management, and he cannot impact the wetlands. He can't fill the wetlands. Any work within 100 feet of the wetlands, he has to come before us, and we review it in terms of impact to the wetlands. Then there's the Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Regulations, and that's similar to the Massachusetts regulations, but it's a little bit stronger. So it includes a provision for 25-foot no alteration areas. So the bylaw regulation says that we look at the first 100 feet from the wetlands boundary upland
Right.
for protection of the wetlands, but we protect the first 25 feet, which is next to the wetlands, because that's the area that's most vulnerable to be altered, to then therefore alter the wetlands. The first 25 feet acts as a filtrations for pollution and herbicides and fertilizers and everything that can get into the wetlands. It helps infiltrate water into the groundwater. It acts as a buffer zone, so if you are doing a little yard work out in your backyard, you're not throwing it into the wetlands because there's 25 feet there before you get to the wetlands.
Right.
That's what we were talking about.
Right.
That they had encroached into that 25 feet and gone up to the wetlands.
Right, but there were
And
also
that's
other
the
issues about,
difference.
Cars leaking and
Well,
all that.
Well, that was the main
And then- but-
difference. And then when they look at, and when these single-family houses are built, the commission will also look within that 100 feet for all the activity that's occurring there and what can potentially impact the wetlands. We just haven't gotten down to that
Trying to
detail.
understand big picture.
No,
here.
I know. We haven't gotten down to that level of detail yet.
Well, I'll add something. So they've marked the 25-foot wetland boundary that we were all about in the last hearing. They're not putting their houses and garages near it. They're not, so the 25-foot
Right.
might end up being fine, and then we can't say you can't build in the 100-foot. We
Right, that's what I
actually,
was trying to understand what the issue was with that.
Okay, we have to go back to, where you're from and
Oh,
who
yes.
you are, and then, so I was just answering, and you never
I
identified
was
who
a
you
neighbor
were.
at Lisa Phelan, across Woods Path.
Okay, great, thank you. Just for we have to write minutes for everything, so that's why we have to know who's speaking.
Jim Chapchak, 33 Starlight Drive. So I went over there today, and I looked at they have very little frontage for their driveway there. Actually, looks like less than normal for one house. And a narrow driveway, it seems less than 18 feet for the driveway, but I didn't measure it. But I did look and take a video of each side of the driveway. Like 2 steps to each side, you have a bubbling brook, a stream, on each side of the driveway. And if you're going to build another 3 houses, you'll have 4 houses up there with cars and trucks and construction equipment coming up that driveway. Talk about polluting those wetlands there. And there's not really, it's a steep drop on either side of the driveway into bubbling brook stream coming. There is actually, under the road, the stream goes under the road. And then it goes under their driveway in 2 spots. So I'm not saying that I oppose this or I'm for it, but I do have a lot of questions regarding wetlands because there are wetlands issues throughout the neighborhood. The original wetlands, when they were diverted or whatever to do this whole development, haven't really worked. People have had water issues. The street floods. Talk about stormwater draining issues. The street floods when it rains. Right there at Starlight Drive. Right, that thing. There's all kinds of stormwater major issues in that area. Bringing in a water main, I don't know where you're going to fit that when the driveway can't, when you have water running under their driveway and under the bridge next to their driveway. Boulder Path is a much wider road, by the way. It's not the same size as this driveway. It's just a driveway. Septics, yeah, it may have perked, but it's full of ledge up there. You're going to have to do blasting. I don't know how that affects the wetlands. And the blasting up on Boulder Trail made some issues up there as well. I noticed that the DEP case number is 315-1219, I believe, and the wetlands number is 307-5. I pulled up that GIS which shows wetlands that's not showed by the botanist plan that was filed. And I heard you say that this might be continued. The neighborhood has got together and would like to hire our own botanist to go out there and take a look at things. Because it's not copacetic with what people are saying. And I'm not saying it's true or false, I just don't know, so we'd like to take a look at that. Landis, have you actually gone out and seen this?
No, I stated earlier that I had been out sick for a few days, so I hadn't been able to get a chance to go out there and take a look at it. But I generally would before a hearing, but I knew he was going to continue it, so I certainly would go out there for every project and walk the line with the botanists if they're available. So yes, it will be verified.
Have our own botanist take a look out there? Do we need permission to go on their property? I know when their botanist came out, I caught him on my land and I was like, what are you doing here? He didn't even tell me he was coming out. He just happened to be in my woods. And I said, what are you doing in my woods? And he said, I'm marking trees. And those are trees. Do we have to give notice to...
You mean botanist or wetland delineation expert?
I don't know
It's a wetland specialist or botanist. It's either
I just
one.
know there was a guy walking my property and my dog was going nuts and I went out there and I said, what are you doing here?
Obviously, if there's wetlands on your property, you can go hire someone to
On my property, but...
file. Right, so I'll speak to my opinion, the commission can speak, is generally the way we do it is they submit a report from a botanist and then I go out there and with the botanist and we walk the line, and if there's any questions then we hang flags. So that hasn't been done yet. As an abutter, if the commission issues a decision and you're unhappy with it, you can appeal it.
Well, I know, and I know the appeal's very easy. It's a $50 thing, and that's not what I was trying to do was get ahead of it and find out if there is an issue, whether we can retain a botanist to look at the same thing.
I'm saying generally that's not the way it happens. Usually it's the applicant and the commission, or if the commission feels like there should be a peer reviewer, and that's to review the wetlands line.
So we're not allowed to submit a botanist report.
Like I said, that's generally how it's done, so I've never come
But that
across
doesn't mean that we
and
can't
a
do
butter's doing it because
Can't go
you're
on the property without the owner's
right. What you can do is you can appeal it.
I know.
What you can do is you can you can appeal the decision of the commission if you feel it's incorrect.
I'm just looking at the GIS plan, which is very different from what they submitted, which is what the DEP...
I haven't gone out there to look at it, so we don't know if there's the same or if it's different, so I wouldn't even go to that yet. And the GIS map is usually different because a GIS map is only an extrapolation of aerial photographs and then overlaid digitally, so they're often very different.
I know it is, but isn't that what the DEP uses?
That was a study that was done a long time ago, and yes, the wetlands lines, the verification on the field, in the field, by a reputable wetland specialist or botanist who's walking along with his auger, looking at the soil and looking at the vegetation and looking at the hydrology. That's how you delineate wetlands in Massachusetts, not by looking at aerial photographs. So it's much more accurate.
Right, and I understand that it's current and fauna, and it's you have to go out there and look at it, but how can we agree or oppose it, not without having somebody look at it ourselves?
It will. Well, like I said, I don't know if the commissioners agree with me, but if you don't agree with the decision that was made by the commission or the review, you appeal the order. That's what you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I'm Brad Nishak. I'm in a butter. My wife and I, 32 Old Town Road. And the proposed development, as a matter of fact, one of the houses is going to abut my property. I have a number of concerns. One being, when those sites were first developed, I believe there were covenants, restrictions. One house. All of us have the same situation. We all have very large lots, limited to one house. And I believe that property was limited to one house as well. As a matter of fact, it was supposed to be a traditional type of house, stick-built. That house there more resembles a building than it does a house. I know that the construction was delayed for years because of that. My other concern is that house, that proposed house, and the leaching fields are on a very steep incline. There's going to be runoff. And I don't know if it's delineated on that map, but there is the bubbling brook behind my house. And that runoff is going to come right into the brook. Is that brook even delineated on that property? Because they are significant wetlands. As a matter of fact, they empty into my neighbor's property over here. He has a very large pond, he has a farm, and depends upon that water for his animals. I'm concerned what kind of impact that's going to have on the water as well. Also, it's all ledge up there. How are they going to develop? Is it going to require blasting, dynamiting? And I'm concerned about not only the nuisance to all of us,
The animals.
but the animals as well will be impacted by that. Number of concerns that have not been addressed.
Yeah.
So, Dan, can you point out again the wetlands? Do you know where he's talking about? Because the green line that I can see from here is the wetlands that runs
There's a little stream
parallel
that comes
to
down.
Old Town Road,
There's a
right?
stream that comes down through here.
Is that what you're talking about?
Comes down
Is
through
that
your
what the abutter's
backyard?
talking about?
Yeah, not backyard.
Okay.
Comes under Starlight
Right.
Drive.
So that's all delineated. That's all shown as wetlands on the plan.
Is it a perennial stream?
No, it's intermittent.
Actually, only one of the streams, there's two of them. One cuts
Yeah.
right under a driveway, it's not on the plan.
And those, I'm Pat DeFrancisco at 36 Old
Right.
Town Road.
So, okay. I'm just trying to answer his question, and Dan, if you can. So the plan that he's showing here, the green line, is the outer boundary of the wetlands.
This is all wetting.
So that is all. They're showing that all is
There's a
wet,
stream that comes, there's a stormwater basin up here for the road.
the line will be
And then there's a
reviewed.
stream that comes down, it comes all the way down from the pond up near the beginning of Starlight Drive. And it meanders down through a bunch of lots here, and then meanders down through here. There's a wetland replication area here that was built when the road was built for this crossing. And then there's a big culvert here, and there's an intermittent stream that runs down through here, ran down all the way down here, and then there's a pond down there. There's a whole bunch of stuff down there.
So to answer to your question directly, is they are showing that wetlands.
That is my concern.
They're not necessarily showing the stream because the stream is not on their property and they're not doing anything to the stream.
So a lot of the things you said are planning board issues, so obviously you're going to go to the planning board meeting and say every single thing you said. If there's a covenant on your property and their property, then there's a record of it, and that's something that the planning board put on. So again, we have to sort of stay within our jurisdiction. We're not supposed to be talking about covenants and things off of the property. So you have a lot to say to planning board, and you should go and look up and see what covenants might have been made.
But as far as conservation, my concern is those wetlands, the runoff, the proposed septic system, leaching fields on the hill.
Which would be the health department, not to throw you in other
runoff.
departments, but
We do
they have to
runoff.
comply, they have to comply with the health department regulations for septic systems.
Right.
So that's,
And stormwater is going to be managed presumably on this property better than it was. It possibly could make the runoff situation better.
There's no treatment out there today for
yeah,
this property.
yeah.
You know, the subdivision has treatments and stormwater basins for the road and all that. But there's no stormwater treatment on this property as it sits.
all right, now, you wanted to?
Yeah, no, I'm Pat DeFrancisco, 36 Old Town Road, and we are at the end of the cul-de-sac, so that this project will be up, like, above us. So I am also concerned about the runoff. We have 2 ponds on our property, and I'm concerned about the runoff, I'm concerned about wildlife, and how it's going to impact that whole area. Then, you know, I plan on attending all of the meetings to make sure that.
So Dan, can you say anything about runoff, how it's, can you address that?
Well, the subdivision regulations require that we provide new stormwater management systems that treat the runoff from all the impervious surfaces, that results in no increase in either the rate or volume of runoff in any of the design storms. Your new regulations require that we use the new stormwater rainfall events, which are significantly higher than the TP40 events. So this is all designed to accommodate those requirements. No increase in rate of runoff, no increase in volume of runoff, treatment, recharge, it's all provided in the design.
So if you go back to the plan that shows the basins, currently there's the stormwater just goes wherever it goes right now. So there's no stormwater management of the site at all. What they're proposing here with these basins that are shown on the plan is when the water is on the paved surfaces, it's directed into these basins rather than just going wherever it goes now. It'll be directed into these basins, which retains the water for a certain period of time, which is calculated by the engineer, and then the water's infiltrated into the ground. So in that, it could possibly be an improvement because it's managing the stormwater while now the stormwater is not managed. So he has to provide that to the planning board, and he has to provide that to us. Yes, there will be more impervious surface, but that's why he has to comply with a stormwater management plan for both planning board and Concom. Everything, all will be looked at. This is just the first hearing, and there are questions. We have questions. The planning board obviously has some things they have to work out too. So.
But do you know the answer to that question about whether or not there were restrictions on how many houses could be built? Because
I do not know.
Going through all of this.
No, because that would not be a conservation issue. It's not a conservation issue.
It certainly would be to the homeowner rather than going through the expense of all of this if it wasn't even allowed.
This is a 2-acre zone because we have, it's actually a 1-acre zone, but because we're in a groundwater protection district and we have on-site septic systems, it ends up being a 2-acre, 80,000 square foot minimum lot size, which is why everybody's lots around here are quite large. This lot was not developed further back in the 90s because it was not economical to do so at the time. There was a lot of rock in the property, and it just didn't make sense to subdivide it at that time in the late 90s because the economies of development were very different back then than they are now. So I'm not aware of any restrictions. I mean, all of the neighbors can only put one house because their lots are only big enough per zoning to accommodate a single house. This is a single-family zoning district. It's not allowed for multi-families. You can't put more than one house on a single lot.
Just add one thing. Carrie Chapchak, 33 Starlight Drive. Sorry, I'm at a tough angle here. So we're across from this driveway here, and that's all wetlands across. So our house would be over to the left. And when I look at that driveway, I see wet here and wet here on both sides. Yeah. And we have deer, we have turkeys, we have beavers who are all coming from our wetlands over to this one. It's like a parade of them. I just wonder, where are they going to go? Are they going to just stay in our area or go someplace else? But I just don't see how they can expand, and there's water here and there's water here.
The wetlands are shown on the plan. There's no streams right next to the driveway. There's no wetlands right next to the driveway. Everything's on the plan. You'll verify that. There is a crossing under the driveway, as we have talked about. There's a stream off-site. But that'll all be flushed out when Landis gets out there and takes a look at everything.
And at this point, you're hoping not to expand the driveway.
We would rather not. I mean, if the planning board wants to go, we need to.
Got pictures in the video today. On either side of the driveway, within 10 feet of the driveway, it's waist deep.
Okay, well, if it's any different than what was shown on the plan, then
It's very different. So
then we
looking for
certainly
you
will
want-
see it, yeah. And as far as the wildlife, unfortunately, the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't cover
Yeah. Wildlife.
general wildlife. It covers endangered species, it covers vernal pools in wetlands.
Yeah.
But it doesn't cover.
Right, it's usually a very great disappointment to find out that conservation really, we're not allowed to care about deer and turkey, it's in geese, it's just not in our jurisdiction. It's just about wetlands.
For the record, I think that I'd be shocked if that area behind my house doesn't have a vernal pool that qualifies, but I have a general question.
If you believe there's a vernal pool
Yeah,
on
you
the
should
site,
certify it.
then there has to be evidence. Well, if it's there almost the entire year, then it's not a vernal pool.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying I know it's there. I mean, I can't see it in the summertime
Yeah.
in the trees, but in the wintertime I see it, and it's...
Well, and if it's in the wetlands, it would be protected anyways, so.
I just have a general question about the difference between stormwater runoff and general runoff. Because it seems to be that, as I said, my issue before was, in my response, I got from my neighbor about the runoff that I was getting on my property from his property, was that the engineer said it was okay. And I said, well, maybe the engineer should bring his rowboat out here and go for a ride, because it's clearly not okay. And I had called someone at the city and at the town, and they said, no, it can't have, this water can't be flowing onto my yard. And, you know, he dealt with it, so it turned out to be a non-issue. But, so I remain a little skeptical of some claims that, you know, it's all just going to be okay.
Is the water in the stream that goes along the abutter's property dry up in the summer?
No, it goes right through my yard. Goes through my other side. I have a double lot, and it comes through, and it's wet. It flows year round. It's flowing right now.
On your properties?
And under the road and under his driveway. It's flowing right now. I have video.
You can hire a specialist to
As a
look at
matter of
that.
fact, turtles, I found turtles migrating across the property in the spring.
So one of the things you can do, you can hire a specialist, a botanist, to be on your own properties and to show that it's a perennial stream. That they can do.
Pictures of the beaver and the turtle.
No, you have to hire a specialist, and that person proves it's a perennial stream, if in fact it is. And then it gets marked as a perennial stream.
But we can't do that, we can only do that on appeal, because
No, you can hire a botanist right now to prove that you have a perennial stream on your land.
On each individual property.
Yeah, well, that travels through your individual properties. You can do that.
we'll file that, we can continue here.
Okay, is anybody else? Okay, looks like we're going to continue this, the next available night appropriate. Okay. 25th.
So at what time?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, 7:15 at March 25th. So the hearing will be continued to March 25th, 7:15.
7 p.m.?
7:15.
Somebody want to make that a motion?
I'll move that.
All in favor?
Aye.
You have to second it.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
You too. I know. Look at Betsy.
So everyone who's here will look at the, they have to look at the regulations or certain requirements on the Okay. Where are we? Well, it should, well, it should get easier from now. I don't know what's going on. hearing. So there's no additional comments to look at, but there are revised plans. Yeah, so you can read that here.
Okay.
Stone Street stuff.
Ah,
Oh,
These are
yeah.
the
Oh, wait a minute.
substantial.
They have revised.
is this a different plan?
These are revised.
It's revised, it's on the bottom. Doesn't it say revised plan on the bottom of it?
Yeah,
Did
mine
you
does.
pass them out to them?
Everyone has a revised
Okay.
plan.
You all have a revised plan.
Okay.
Cool. Received yesterday.
Yep.
But I think I'm on the wrong plan. Actually, I need one. I don't think I have what everyone else has.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act and Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Walsh Brothers Building Company for the construction of a single-family dwelling with driveway, utilities, and associated grading located at 300 Stone Street. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held in the Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on February 12th, 2020, beginning at 7:15. All interested persons are requested to be present. Hearing was held and continued to tonight, and there are no new comments from the town boards. Representing the applicant.
Rob Truex, Geohm Engineering Consultants. So since the last meeting, we had a meeting with Landis and town engineer to go over what we were going to do about the runoff coming out of the site. So we came up, the idea we talked about was, as you can see, this is where the runoff dumps off from the street. So I've moved the swale over slightly to get it over by the gravel parking lot, which runs along here. And then I've built this sediment basin. It's just grading. It's approximately just a little over a foot deep. The top of the berm's 173, the bottom's 171.5, so it's like a foot and a half deep, very shallow, with a riprap spill over at the back. So it's just a sediment basin to help capture some of the TSS coming off the road and pollutants before it heads down to the brook. So we discussed it at the meeting, and this is what we said we would do, and so it's on the revised plan. I talked to Landis a little bit. I think she's comfortable with it, and I know Powell's comfortable with it. We're not putting an easement around it for the town. We talked about that as well, and didn't think it was necessary because the homeowner would be responsible. I'm assuming it'll be in the order that they will be responsible to maintain it. And it's going to be grass, so I would think they would just mow it on a regular basis because it's near the house. It would make sense that they would maintain it. The slope going down into it is very flat. I didn't make a nice steep banking. I kept it pretty flat, so this would really just look like a lawn if they took care of it properly. And going down into the basin. So when it rains, it obviously is going to flow.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Landis?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. So because this is a work in the riverfront area, it's a lot recorded prior to 1996. So you're working within the minimum envelope to build the house.
Right. Pretty small.
Pretty small, yeah. Still got a bit of a backyard there, but
About 30 feet at most.
Okay.
Maintaining the grades back there, so.
Right.
I mean, the basin's now disturbing more.
Right, I know.
You gotta get a little like that.
It's sort of in the treat area. I mean, when I walked back there, it was looked like there was old fill and kind of altered area, and
I'm sure the lot goes back to the 70s when there was a house there. So.
Okay. The only other comments I have is if the commission closes the hearing and issues a decision. I mean, it's not the best location for a house, I agree. But they seem to have managed to meet all the regulations and requirements to build a single-family house there.
All right, Doug?
Okay.
I may have missed this, but I see another plaque shall be located on the property boundary by the basin. What is the plaque? What was it?
Right, so that's why I was saying my other comments were if the commission decides to close the hearing and issue decision, so, as far as the no alteration plaques.
Oh, no alteration.
Right.
Okay.
You want them back here too?
So I would suggest putting one,
Where were you thinking?
okay, this is the whole plan.
I had them here and here.
Yep. I was thinking at least on the other side of the basin.
Over here?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're gonna come over there.
Could you show me where?
I have them going all the way across, and up this side.
Right.
And she's saying maybe over here.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the basin
here,
and not
here.
near the property
Yeah,
line.
those corners.
'Cause
Yeah,
otherwise,
that's fine.
Okay.
that's like a great place to go dump your
Yeah.
leaves.
That's someone else's property at that point.
Well, you know,
It's been done
it
before.
happens.
Yep.
Oh, that's fine, so we'll put them on the side, that's fine. I can get a revised plan, send it over. So you just want right here, here, and here? You want one up here too?
Yeah, I would put maybe 2 at the back of the basin and then 1 at the property line.
Up here?
Yeah, wherever. Yeah.
Alright. Okay, so 3 more.
That's it.
Yeah, I have no objections, no comments.
No, I guess it's okay. I still think this should be called uplands. I don't like it called flood zone X.
I didn't either, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
But-
But it's the way it, I talked to Joyce about it, and she said that's the new designation on the map, so, I don't know.
Okay, so that's what confused me
Yeah.
I know.
initially, but aside from that,
What they call a flood zone
Oh,
X.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, you could put parentheses, which is an upland.
That's true, I put it there. I wouldn't call it non-flood.
But even floodplain is upland.
do we have anybody in the audience?
I wouldn't call it
Impressed.
non-flood.
Non-flood.
Simplified.
Anybody here concerned with this project? Guess not, we can close the hearing. I'll take a
I'll
motion.
move to close
I'll
it.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you close the hearing and if you issuing the order of conditions, so the additional no alteration plaques, and that the order should also state that no additional riverfront areas should be altered, and that the sediment basin and grass swales should be maintained
By the homeowner.
by the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then we have a condition about the plaques too, to make sure they're kept there in perpetuity.
Anybody have anything else?
No.
I'll accept the motions, accept the order.
I'll move that.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I know we have one more hearing that we need to get to, and I just wanted to announce that we still have on our agenda the request for modification for Brookside Village, and I know that there's some people waiting here, which I think the commission should take up a conversation with it, but I was told that the developer is not going to be attending tonight, so just to let you guys know. But I think the commission should still discuss what they saw at the sidewalk. I'll let you guys know. I meant to call you earlier, but I didn't get to. So again, this is a continued public hearing for 11 Borden Lane, Lot 6. There's no additional comments.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Wall Street Development for the construction of a single-family house, 11 Boyden Lane, Lot 6, Walpole. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held on the Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, Room 112, on December 11th, 2019, beginning at 7:30 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Hearing was held and continued to tonight. There are no additional comments from town boards. Representing the applicant.
Good evening, Luke Petrozzi from Wall Street Development Corp. The board, as the question knows, we have an existing order here on this lot that doesn't expire until March 17th. But in the interim period, we did have the opportunity for our wetlands consultant and for Landis to go out onto the site, and they did verify the line, the new line. Is that correct?
Yep, I went out and with Paul McManus, and we looked at the areas where there was difference in soil, and agreed that there was a change in the line.
Yeah, so that part of this process has been completed. So the new line that is on the revised plan is the line that we'll be working with come March 17th. You know, my other request was to be allowed to do some incursion into the 25-foot no disturb area that the commission likes to have, and would like to spend the next couple of meetings trying to get to a point where we've provided some adequate mitigation to allow for that offset in the 25-foot zone. And it really is, you know, this point right in here is just trying to allow the house to be a little bit more into a level area rather than into the slope of that rear of the lot, which would require a lot of grading. So what we've proposed is, you know, a stone wall with some buffer plantings. Currently, the area is very sparsely vegetated as it is. So, I know you've expressed your opinions before regarding the 25-foot zone, but I think this is kind of a unique situation in that it is a point of finger-like projection that under the Wetlands Protection Act and other regulations the commission would be allowed to allow us to fill 500 feet at their discretion. So not asking for that filling to take place, but I am asking for a little relief on the 25-foot area down to 10 in that one area where the point of that wetland would affect the lot. So I would fully anticipate continuing the hearing to your next meeting.
March 11th.
Do you think we should have them March 11th, or should we wait till March 25th? Discuss it then.
Well, your order doesn't expire until, I think, March 21st. So.
Oh, was it 21st? Yeah.
I think.
So it's all a question of whether or not we want to have, you want to see me every meeting or not, and, just say hi. But that's really all I have to say tonight. Basically, your consideration for allowing us a little bit of flexibility down to that point of that wetland. Not sure why it decreased in size, or but it is a disappearing area. It's discussion about that at all?
No.
So, anyways, I'd request a continuance until March 25th. And any feedback on the requested waiver, so take that into consideration. I mean, it doesn't have to be all the way down to 10, it can, 5 feet, 10 feet would be, anything would be helpful to our ability to shape the lot or place the house on the lot.
It just doesn't seem like a hardship situation. I'm talking out of order. We're not doing our order, should we?
I'd like to hear
okay, sorry.
anything
Go ahead,
Amanda
Candace.
says to continue.
All right.
Do you have anything else?
Well, I just, in my report, I just took sections from the bylaw regulations that pertain to the 25-foot no alteration area and why the commission has it and how they apply it, and to refresh one's memory of that. So I don't feel like I have to read all that. The commissioners can read it, and I'm sure Mr. Petrosi's read it. So, I think the bylaw is, the bylaw regulations and then 25-foot no alteration areas is there for a reason, so the commission should apply it. I do want to bring up that the erosion control around this area is breaking down and needs to be fixed, and there's trash everywhere, lots of places. Construction from the lot next door, and looks like a bunch of leaves were blown off the road into the area, so there's some cleanup that needs to be done.
I'll have the erosion go back out and take a look at it.
So it doesn't seem to meet what the commission has looked at in the past as reasons for giving a waiver to the 25-foot no alteration area. And the applicant knew that it was there when he constructed his subdivision. Sometimes putting walls kind of gives an opportunity to people to throw things over the wall, so it's not necessary to kind of prevent people from throwing things into the wetlands and altering the wetlands more. It's such a small area that it's already vulnerable for shrinking even more. And regulations does speak to enhancing buffer areas, but not in exchange for taking them away. So.
Right, that's I guess what our proposal is, to enhance the buffer zone that we're leaving intact. I think you'd have to admit that the buffer zone that's there for that point area is not contributing much in terms of the interests of the applicant. I would say that it's a very marginal type of buffer zone, unlike for vegetated wetland where it's pretty active. So it's kind of a unique situation right now. It's a point of a wetland that stops for some reason. So we're going to continue. If you
Well, I think that Doug and Emilio and Betsy want to say.
I think there is something to be said to Landis' point that if we accept that, if we make this exception, it cascades. We want to be consistent, I think, with what.
I don't know of any situations in the past where you've granted a waiver from the 25-foot. So if you have a provision in your regulations that allows for it, and you never grant one, then there's something to be said for your regulation not being reasonable, I would say, at this point. So if you're saying you've granted the waiver in the past, and these are the reasons why we've granted it on some conditions, that's one thing. But if you're saying that you never grant a waiver because you're holding fast to this 25-foot arbitrary line that you've established, then that would not be a reason. So, not that I'm not trying to pick an argument, I'm just saying that you allow for a waiver for a reason, but you don't give any reasons under what conditions you would grant a waiver, and you've kind of saying to me that you've never granted one. So either the bylaw or the regulations needs to be revisited, or you need to put some characteristics of what a waiver is, the justification of what a waiver would be entitled to. Not being unreasonable, it's just that you can't have it both ways. Either you have a legitimate reason to give a waiver and you provide for a waiver, but you're saying that we're never giving a waiver. Doesn't make much sense or fairness to the applicant.
It seemed like your only justification for moving into that zone was so that the house didn't have to be set back into the sloped property behind it.
It is a hardship. It's a topographical hardship that we have on the lot, but at the same time, we're providing mitigation. We're not asking for a free ride. We're asking to offset what is presently would be considered, if you were going to value buffer zones, this would be considered probably not very valuable in terms of the buffer zone characteristics. We're asking for relief of the waiver in exchange for enhancing that buffer zone over and above what you'd see there today. So it's a it's a discretionary decision. I mean, we're not looking for a free ride, but you can't say that you grant waivers and then don't grant waivers.
We should probably just go through the,
see what everybody else
things
thinks.
and not make it everything dialogue.
Yeah, I know. I think you know my thoughts on this, and I think if we gave a waiver to everybody who wanted to build a bigger house closer to the wetlands, we wouldn't have. We'd be giving waivers grants all the time. So, I mean, your rationale doesn't make sense to me, and you were fully aware of the lot and its configuration. So the fact that there's a wetland that's inconvenient to you, and you want to build it closer than our regulations state, then that's not an exception that I think I would be willing to entertain.
All right, so a couple of points. One is that we sometimes do cut into a 25-foot a little bit for an extreme hardship of some pre-existing situation. I mean, so in my 15 or so years on the commission, sure, but not this, not a brand new building that's never been built before on a regulation-sized lot. We don't make exceptions, but that's incorrect. That we've never made an exception. We've never had, a little tiny bit of a corner of a building going into the 25-foot for true problems with the lot. This is not a problematic lot. I mean, you designed it so you could have a driveway come up the side and you can put a house there and you've got a backyard. Second thing is, there are lots of towns that have 50-foot no builds around here. Norfolk does, Dover does, Mansfield does, Easton, Norwood, where Al's the agent. Sharon has a 100-foot no build. We don't have a no build per se in that it's separate from a no disturb. You can't build. I mean, essentially our no disturb is a no build, but we're actually one of the weaker bylaws in this area.
Well, I think you've all copied the same bylaw and you just put your own number in there. It depends on what you feel like, what the members feel like doing at the time that they vote the regulation.
I'm just saying it's pretty weak, and it's because developers are fairly strong in this town. There's no way we could ever get a 50-foot no build. I don't know how Al did it in Norwood. And then the second thing is that there are tables showing buffers around wetlands and how effective they are in removing pollutants and having habitat value. We're down at the bottom of that list. We're about as minimal as you could get Other towns must look at us and go, what are they doing in Walpole? Well, I don't know, but here's what we're doing. We have a 25-foot no disturb, and I don't think this is an exceptional situation. The house hasn't even been built yet.
No, I can
You
only
could
say-
tilt it or something.
Well, I can do
Yeah.
a lot of things there, but it's
Yeah.
a discretionary thing, what's in the best interest of the property, the wetland, the fire, and all that stuff. So I will say that I've built in Norwood, I got a waiver from the Norwood Conservation Commission to build within 50 feet and alter. So these things happen in other towns. There's not like a carte blanche, like we don't do it.
We do it, though. But not
Other
for a
towns-
house.
Other towns do it too, so I mean.
Right, so we make exceptions. This is a house that hasn't been built yet. Yeah, so.
The application is still pending. Folks can make a decision when we come back, and we'll go our way with whatever decision you make. We have rights, you have rights, and we'll just do it, you know. So I'm just expressing from the applicant standpoint that sometimes a little relaxation of some parameters is better off for the entire set of circumstances. You can have 25 feet of nothing, or you can have 10 feet of something that's valuable. You guys can make a decision. You're on the Conservation Commission, you're the members, so if you want to have nothing.
It's not nothing. One thing Paul and I did do is we looked up and we saw trees that would be taken down if the encroachment was closer into the buffer zone of what you wanted. So it's not nothing. It is trees, it is shrubs. There is vegetation out there that would be cut down adjacent to the wetlands line if the commission accepted this 10-foot no alteration buffer. It's not nothing. It's definitely trees
You take
and
trees down?
vegetation that protects the wetlands. But we looked and there was 3 or 4 trees that would be coming down. So I just want to clarify that for the commission for the record. It's not nothing.
All I can say is that you think that because there's a tree there today, these trees have been there and they're not in very good. You know, we cut some trees and they're hollow in the middle, so there's, you know, I can go back and have somebody in arborist look at the tree and see, just because there's trees there today, doesn't mean that the trees are gonna be there tomorrow or next year. Windstorms could come by and just blow them down, just like we do a lot. Anyways, we're gonna continue this until.
Well, I've got a couple
Okay,
of
go ahead.
questions here. First question is, I see the little circles indicate you're thinking of planting something there. What are they?
Well, it's a list of plants there that are listed in the chart, similar to what we would do to
Okay.
enhance the buffer zone or any other project.
What are the dark black?
Those are your, I think your emblems or whatever.
And it's the wetland. That's the wetland boundary, I think.
No, that's your.
Those are no alteration
flags.
Oh.
Flags, okay, on the previous plan.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He's come on the 10-foot.
He didn't name them.
Okay, that's fine. Next thing is, have you done a soil test in this area here to find out why the water disappears like you claim?
We haven't intruded into the 25 from the original. We've had this fenced off and staked off since the original subdivision, so we haven't gone in there to do any soil testing or anything like that, so. But I can only rely on what McManus has done in terms of augering and whatever.
Yeah, okay.
So,
And has he done a sample in this vicinity here?
yeah, I guess he has. I mean, I don't know the methodology.
In the vicinity of what, Al?
Well, of this little
Yes.
Yeah,
finger
that's the
here.
new delineation,
Yes. We looked at the soils.
micro delineation.
And what are they? Any idea? You remember?
Well, I don't remember specifically, no, but we looked at the area the new delineation between, and the soils changed from upland to hydro.
Kind of a strange situation. I mean, it's like, I don't know what to say, except, you know, we're gonna put a house there, fine, but that, if the wetland dries up or continues to shrink. And,
Well, I'm not sure how well the water's getting through the pipe now.
Mhm.
'Cause the pipe is,
Same
yeah.
elevation as what it was before.
Yeah.
It's cleaner, it's clearer, it's...
When I looked at today, the water was below the invert to the pipe, so couldn't get in through the pipe.
And that's interesting because
It has to rise higher.
everywhere else the water is high as can be.
I know. It didn't seem right to me because it was below the invert. It was not getting through the pipe. Yeah.
Well, all I know is when, for the design, it's the invert of the pipe is where the original.
And it's been surveyed where you placed it. That's, but I'm not sure.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
So, I'll come back on the 25th. Elena, could you just send me your report there, because I haven't received that.
I don't send it out to applicants, but you can get a copy if you want.
We should get a copy of your report.
It's the report to the commission. But if you want a copy, I don't send it out to applicants.
I'd like to get a copy.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, you're continuing it to March 25th?
I'll accept a motion to that effect.
Okay.
Second.
At what time? 7:30?
What time do we have them already?
So I have 7th and 15th taken.
Right. So we have 15 minutes to go over the regulation changes. I'll probably put that up again, but 7:30.
I can stay later if you want.
No, it's fine.
We
It all
have
ends up being later.
right. So it's 7 o'clock, which is the stormwater and erosion bylaw regulations and wetlands protection bylaw regulations, and then we have 7:15 Starlight Drive, and we can put them on for 7:30.
Okay.
Lot 6.
It'll be more like 8:30, 9.
Okay.
All in favor?
Thank you. I'll get my next turn. You want me to stick around for that?
You should, yeah. Shall we do the condominium association next?
Up to you guys.
Okay, condominium associations here.
Okay, so you're going to general business. So there's the applicant requested a minor modification to Meadowbrook Trust Brook Village for the change in the wall design. He did talk to me today, and they're still waiting for their structural engineer to submit his report, so they are not going to be at the meeting tonight. The commission had a site visit on Saturday where Emilio and Betsy and I attended to look over the site. So the request for the minor modification is still pending. You guys didn't want to make a decision at the last hearing.
We can't vote on it because the applicant isn't here. We haven't opened it, right?
Is that correct?
Well, it's not a public hearing, it's a
Yeah.
meeting, it's a request for
Well, we can
minor
have-
It's for minor
modification, but,
modification.
We
yeah, I
can-
wouldn't suggest doing anything without the applicant
Yeah.
being here.
However, I did not attend. I had some problems, but I did not attend. However, the pictures I see is not a picture of a retaining wall. And as I understand the plans presented when the project was proposed for development, it was a retaining wall. A row of loose boulders with spaces between is not a retaining wall. It doesn't retain anything. So my opinion is he's supposed to put a wall that retains this soil at the above level and doesn't erode away the high land into the low land. That protects the environment of the wetland in many places. So I don't see that, in my view, that we should change the plan from what was proposed originally. I'm not saying that a stone wall could not function there, but a stone wall is more than just a bunch of rocks they happen to discover on the site and they just push them aside to this location. To me, that's not a stone retaining wall. So he could satisfy my definitions of a retaining wall with stones properly placed and positioned, and I've seen plenty of good stone walls all over the place, many in Walpole and many in other towns. So I know it can be done. It takes some effort, but the existing condition is showing no effort at all. So that's my opinion.
I agree with everything you've said. Sounds good.
Yeah, after viewing the wall, it didn't look, the further we walked towards, away from the lower portion of the wall to the higher portion, it didn't look all that sturdy. And, in 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what that's going to look like. There was some erosion, and I'd be more concerned from a structural standpoint of those decks overlooking what that's going to happen, to that land that the wall is supposed to hold back. So I don't like the long-term effects of what that might be, in 2 years from now. So, but I think the building inspector should weigh in, and the structural engineer should weigh in on that. But it didn't look all that sturdy. And as Al said, there are lots of good stone walls out there, but this one didn't look all that well put together. So anyway, that's my opinion.
All right, so I went on the site visit as well. I agree it does not look like a proper stone wall, nor the properly terraced so that the terrain comes up more or less flat to the wall and then is retained. It's sloping down. But Landis also helped me the other day when I was discussing this with her to frame the question carefully. If the wall were not built yet, if the project were still under development, and they said, okay, we have a block wall that we proposed, but we want to switch it out to a properly made rock wall, no wall exists yet, we'd say, yeah, that's a minor modification. Properly built block wall or a properly built rock wall, right? And that might be what's actually before us. And then, is it properly built gets into more of the jurisdiction of the building inspector. And the building inspector is involved with this, right, Landis? The building inspector is examining the wall. The building inspector is going to have an opinion on the wall and whether it's properly holding things up. And so it's not exactly our jurisdiction to do what the building inspector is doing. We can say yes, a properly built rock wall is a minor modification. This one happens not to be properly built. It needs to be looked into. And then finally, when the certificate of compliance comes around, we can say, well, you didn't build it properly, so we're not signing off on this. Landis, what does it mean that the order of conditions expired January 26, 2016, 4 years ago, and it was not extended? What's up with that?
It means that the order of conditions, it means exactly what it says. They never requested an extension. They're working on expired order of conditions at this point.
Okay. So you're suggesting that they have a deadline to fix?
You're right. So there's two things. I think you explained the minor modification good, and I feel a little uncomfortable talking about it when they're not here. But
Okay.
it seems like, at one point, we did issue a notice of noncompliance where this issue came up with the wall and some other items that needed to be addressed. The roof leaders needed to be addressed, the wall needed to be addressed, and they didn't really they didn't really address it. So I think that the commission, again, needs to put in writing that the wall is not constructed in a way that it should be, as far as we can tell. And I did look at the plan, and the plan gives top of wall elevations and grading elevations, and from an eye view, it doesn't appear that it's constructed properly. Top of wall means there needs to be a top to the wall, and there clearly, in lots of areas, is not a top to a wall. It basically, the fill kind of goes over the boulders, and then it goes down, and there's no top of wall, and there's not a solid construction wall. So I would suggest issuing a enforcement order or notice non-compliance, stating these issues and giving them a deadline to address them.
Okay.
Or fines.
Okay.
And they need to, in the past, the commission has issued extensions even when orders have been expired, because there's a fee associated with it under the bylaw. But the work can also be done under the enforcement order. So.
All right, what would be a reasonable deadline for that, considering it's a 400-foot wall?
So we give him an enforcement order and give him a date by which he should complete this wall.
Okay.
What's a reasonable deadline for a 400-foot wall?
Good question. So it's good to have him here at the hearing to talk about it. So
was he supposed to be here?
No.
Oh.
Well,
Not on the agenda.
No, it's on the agenda. No.
Well,
it's on business. It's under business.
Yeah.
So he knew we were having a site visit. He knew they were here the last time. He knew we were having a site visit, and then the discussion was going to continue. So.
But that's not continuing a hearing.
No, it's not a hearing.
Really a hearing, because it's just all that's on the agenda is a request for a minor modification. That's not a hearing. It's an administrative process.
And I'm not sure that's a minor modification either. If it was 50 feet long or something, it might be, but not the distance this goes.
Should the building inspector weigh in on the wall first, or how do you want to, do you know what I mean?
Well, the building inspector should require, my understanding, any place where it's above a certain height, there should be a fence on the top of the wall. And I don't know how you put a fence on the top of that wall.
Could I point out one detail? The building commissioner has asked us to provide him with the structural engineer's report. We've engaged a structural engineer, but he's not completed yet. So the commissioner is looking for structural input on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So can you say that again? The building commissioner asked for
us to submit. I gave him the letter that we had sent to you.
Right, which you stamped, yeah.
Yep, and he said he would like to see more structural components to that letter.
Yeah.
Address the technical structural details of the wall.
Right.
We've engaged a structural engineer. You met him on Saturday.
Okay, yeah.
And he's given us a draft report that we're working on, but it's not complete yet.
Okay.
It's much more of a performance-based kind of an issue than it is a structural design per se, because it's boulders, and you really can't design a boulder wall. It's really much more performance and function-based kind of an engineering issue. But that's something that Craig would address in his letter as well.
Right, so maybe we should work with the building inspector, because we can look at the plans and say, well, there's supposed to be a top of wall elevation at 252, and then your above grade's supposed to wrap into the 252, and when you look at it, it just kind of goes like, it doesn't, nothing's flat, nothing's wrapping in, so
Absolutely
that
right.
we can look at. The
Yes.
structural integrity should be the building inspector's department, so I can work with him on a date that makes sense, but he has to comply with the plan that was submitted and approved under the order of conditions, and it doesn't. The plan, doesn't look like that. He said he was going to get a surveyor out there to shoot some grades and stuff like that as well. But I guess at this point I would say let me talk to the building inspector and find a reasonable time. The developer knows that he's not in compliance now, so he's not in compliance with us. He's not, and he has things that need to be fixed, obviously.
Yep.
But we want to give him opportunity to fix those issues, I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to issue an order of non-compliance?
Well, I don't know what date to put on it for compliance, so I would like to
Well,
talk
let's
to
wait
the
on-
building
okay.
inspector and also, again, put it on the agenda for March 11th.
And tell him.
And I told him when you come to March 11th, you need to have a plan of how you're going to fix the wall.
Okay. So
Not
he-
just tell us what's wrong with it, but we need to know the steps that are going to occur.
Right.
So
Okay.
I could send him a letter saying that
Yeah.
the commission is expecting you to come to March 11th
Right.
with either things that you have done to fix the wall or things you're going to do to fix the
Okay.
wall. And if you don't have that at the next meeting, then, we could start to fine or something like that.
Okay.
If that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Everybody happy?
Not really, but
Could we add a few comments, or would you rather wait till next?
Chair.
Yeah,
You
sure.
want to say something else?
Well, I think that we wanted to make sure that we were clear as the owners of the real estate now, that we don't feel that the retaining wall that's been built represents the functionality that a wall that was approved should provide. We don't see it. We don't see a boulder wall in general, regardless of this one or others, as a minor modification given the importance of the wall. We have many photographs that show footings within 2 feet of the back of this wall, footings for porches and decks that are built on the back of these units, and there's literally no yard space whatsoever, and very clearly no opportunity for a fence of any reasonable kind. We agree the elevations are important. The drawings show elevations, the top of wall, bottom of wall. We don't think the bottom of wall is built correctly either. The boulder wall without a fence or a cap on the top of the wall does not offer equal functionality to a wall. It doesn't offer the safety factors or the appearance or provide the erosion control, and therefore we don't believe that the boulder wall is an or equal component as referenced on the drawings to the engineered wall. It's not any.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have a copy of the approved plan for this?
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Okay, now when you mention that the support posts are only 2 feet from the wall, is that built according to the plan? Are those posts supposed to be
There's
2
been no
feet from
survey
the
work
wall?
done. There's been no survey work done, so I can't answer that.
Well, but you could very easily determine if the post is 2 feet from the wall, then what's the plan show?
Well, I mean, I don't have drawings with
You-
me
you
tonight. I'd
should-
be happy to scale it off, but
You should check
It-
things like that, because now when I saw,
I did
those-
measure it.
when I saw those pictures that you passed around at the last meeting, I looked at the supports for the decks or the porches or whatever they were, and they weren't in a straight line, one right after the
No,
other.
they're not.
They
Mhm.
tilted and twisted, and to me, that indicates it wasn't built according to the plan. So now, we're not concerned by that, so I didn't bring that up at the meeting at the time, but the distance from those posts to the wall certainly is on the plan for our benefit to look at. And if it's only 2 feet and it's supposed to be 6 or 10 feet, that's something that you as a trustee of this operation should be checking out.
Well,
to
we
see
we
that
did.
he's given you the backyards that you're supposed to have.
Well, we have done that. We have not surveyed it, but we've been dealing with the issue of this wall, along with several other site-related issues that Landis is aware of, involving stormwater issues and so on. And we've been dealing with it for a year with the builder. And the most recent occupant, the last occupant to move into the complex was a little bit over a year ago. So it's a very new project, and quite frankly, the builder's been pretty non-responsive on much of it. We did not do a survey because we consider that to be the burden of the builder. We did take measurements. I personally took measurements of the wall, and like was said before, if we don't know what the top of the wall is, we don't know what the front of the wall or the back of the wall is because of the way it's built. But I can tell you that in one location, it's 2 feet to the back of the wall from the columns. In another location, it's approximately 3 to 4, but it varies. So the footings for those columns are immediately behind this wall. And that's why we believe that a wall that doesn't have the long-term structural integrity, that an engineered wall, an interlocking engineered wall with a proper height, a proper footing, and a fence post on top of it, is the appropriate way as it was approved.
Well, you're basically saying the same thing I said, so we'll see what they propose to do about it at our next meeting.
Could I ask that if there is to be modifications to the existing wall, given past performance, I would like to see a design of how that wall is going to be restored. I'd like to know how it was built in the first place. That was in the NOI, and they have never responded to that. I'm sorry, the NON, and they haven't responded to that. And I'd like to see survey information so that we know where that wall is relative to the riverfront area and relative to the footings and relative to the houses, so that we have some engineering data to know whether the proposed modifications are going to be done the way they're proposed. And the
Well,
other
I think
thing,
that's part of his responsibility, to give us a plan that shows how he proposes to build this stone retaining wall instead of the concrete block wall. So it's his responsibility to provide that information to us anyway. So I don't see that that's an issue.
the other thing that is extremely important to us is the building commissioner is holding 6 of the permanent occupancy permits. And he's holding them specifically until this issue, and I believe there may be other details, but significantly this issue is resolved to the satisfaction of the commission and the building inspector. That's a major problem for people that are in those units. They cannot finance, they cannot sell. They would have a title problem. without having a permanent occupancy permit. And there's 6 of them that are being withheld for this reason. So my point is that that's good leverage, but timing is important. And so far, there hasn't been any sense of urgency to complete this issue by the builder. And I'd like to see, we ask that there be some teeth put into a completion date.
I don't think we get into that. We're only empowered to get into the wetland issues. And, the retaining wall is part of a wetland issue in many parts of that property. We can't get into the financing and such, but I don't know why.
I'm not asking.
I don't know why anybody would buy a unit that doesn't have a clear title.
All of the units were sold with a temporary occupancy permit, and 24 of them have had permanent issued, and the commissioner has indicated he's using that to force resolution.
Because that's that's the only teeth to have the developer do anything.
Understood.
Because as far as the Conservation Commission, their regulations is the wetlands and the riverfront area. Honestly, the wall's not anywhere near the wetlands. So if it falls down, it's not going to impact the wetlands. I'm not trying to be crass. I'm just if the commission, what their path is through the bylaw only is to issue fines. If the applicant doesn't pay the fines, they can only issue $300 per day per violation. If the applicant doesn't pay the fines, they go to Rentham District Court. At the Rentham District Court, the judge is going to ask you, why did you fine? What's the impact to the wetlands? We have to explain to the district court what the impact of the wetlands is based on the fines. Is there imminent, is the wetlands altered because of this activity? That's what you have to explain. I'm just telling you because I've been there before. And they may say, they may reduce the fines. They may say, well, there's no impact to the wetlands, so we're not going to uphold the fines. There's what they're looking for is if the wetland resource areas have been altered, and then the town usually has to pay town council to do that. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, it would have to be another route, which would involve town council as well. So unfortunately the Conservation Commission doesn't have a lot of teeth. So that's the one reason why the building inspector has more teeth than the Conservation Commission.
Right.
Can hold back the occupancy permits because there's a value to that, to the developer.
So it's a good thing that he's holding this.
It's the
Right,
only
I
thing.
know it's impacting you guys because you're the ultimate owners, but that's why it's happening. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
to
that's-
inconvenience you guys, but it's to try and get the developer to
Right.
comply.
Okay.
I thought there might be a bond on it, and I asked Landis, and Landis said no, condominiums don't typically have
It did go
bonds.
through
If
the
there were
planning
a
board, but there
The
wasn't a
town
bond.
doesn't require a construction bond.
Because it doesn't get transferred to the town. It's private property. The road doesn't get transferred. It's so once it's constructed, it's the condo association's property. It's not the roadway isn't the town's responsibility. So that's why they
You
don't.
can have a road if you'd like.
That's okay.
And also, it's the building inspector's purview if the wall should fail and someone's back deck should fail as a result. It's not a wetland issue.
Well,
It's-
the building inspector should be upholding. It
Yeah.
did go through planning board. It did go through site plan review, and he's the enforcement agent for that. So.
I guess my request was directed more to the effect that we are asking our town that we pay taxes in to hold, to the degree possible, to hold this builder's feet to the fire, to do what he proposed, what he was permitted to do, and what he sold. And we've put an awful lot of work into trying to keep everybody informed. I do believe the wall is a threat to the wetland. There are places where if it continues to erode, it's only a matter of time before it will be I guess it wouldn't be in the flagged wetland per se, but it certainly does represent a risk.
And I think the commission is, and me as well, is doing everything we possibly can do to hold the developer responsible for the plan. But I'm just giving you the truth of the teeth and the ability of the Conservation Commission to go sort of beyond the physical. You know, if a wetlands was being altered, if a wetland was being filled, there's a lot more teeth involved. But a possible occurrence is something that's a little bit harder to sink teeth in. So, but yes, we will write him a letter and have him come in here again and explain how he can come in compliance with our order of conditions and the plan. The commission still hasn't made their decision on the minor modification, or if it's a major modification, that may drag the process out longer as well, just so that you realize that.
All right. So it would be a hearing on the 11th, is what you said, Landis?
Right, so it's on our agenda still, and I think what the commission agreed that I send him a letter sort of outlining that we expect him to come on the 11th, telling us how he's going to address this situation, to come into compliance with the plan and the order, and discuss the major modification issue as well.
Would that be a hearing, or would that be in the general?
Right, so a
business?
hearing is usually a hearing is something that's advertised as a public hearing. Minor modification is just during the meeting of the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Come back.
Unless you want to put them on a time
No,
specific.
let's just leave it like it is.
But so that developer knew that we were going to meet and he should be coming? I mean, the developer knew about this meeting and decided not to come?
When he called today, I said it's on the agenda. They had a hearing. I recommend them being you guys still having a conversation regarding it. He said he wasn't able to have the structural engineer go out there and take a look at the plan, which the actual wall, which was directed for him to do. So he felt that why should he come in, because he did not have that report. He hasn't had a survey. He hasn't done the work that you were asking him to do.
Then I wish we had asked these guys to do what we've asked other people to do. Phone your office the afternoon of to see if it's on.
Well, I knew, and I meant to tell them, but
but they
didn't have the
but they just
opportunity.
need to actually know, because we've had this happen before
They
with
should
the
know that. We can't
butters.
tell everybody to do everything, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're just
Okay.
we're the organization commission. So.
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is Lou.
Wall Street development.
Hopefully I won't have to watch it on TV afterwards. So I'm here to request both an extension, you're gonna deal with the extensions too, and a minor modification for Lot 2 voiding. Now, in this particular case, this was another lot where I'd asked originally for some relief on the 25-foot buffer, but in this case I went and we redesigned the house to fit onto the lot, this was the original house that was approved. This is the new footprint of the house that we've designed and proposing to construct. So it's not too different, but because it's a change, thought we'd come in to get the modification and the extension, so that we're all dealing with the same plan, but it comes down to reviewing it when it's built. So it's essentially the same. It's just what we've been able to move the house a little bit forward, created some different angles to the house and twisted it a little bit so that it's further away from the setback lines, which is always danger in the building.
So what is your wall construction and how high is it?
I have no idea. It's a proposed boulder wall in this particular area,
Haha.
right in this general area. It's less than 4 feet. So, you know, from a structural standpoint, you don't really need a permit for anything less than 4 feet. So, I don't know where the structural thing comes into play, but it's under 4 feet. It's not subject to the building code.
So it's essentially the same as what was approved before, but it's
Yeah.
just in a different location.
I think previously we had this boulder wall, longer boulder wall, but since now we've pulled the houses further back, we just think we need it in this particular area, and then this will all get graded. If we think we need more of a wall, we'll put more of a wall in. Construction change.
Well, the basic idea is if you're building a wall as a retaining wall to keep the lawn reasonably level in that spot and not changing every time it rains, then you have to pay a little attention to how you build a wall, that's all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can build walls with blocks, you know, they have those structural blocks, and you can do the Bruslock walls.
Yeah, but you also can build them with stones that fit together, and somebody paid a little attention to what they were doing, and it can be just as good.
Yeah, we have boulders. I don't know if you know, but we have a line of boulders right now that's sitting there ready to be implemented or be installed once we get going. So it really comes down to the cost when you get into the walls, because Bruslock and the other block walls are, they're more money.
Right, so you do have a detail of the boulder with the time line. So the intention is to have one large boulder line basically lined up, because it's only 4 feet high.
Yeah, it's less than 4 feet high.
Right. So I don't have any issues with this particular minor modification. There's not changing the wetlands line. He's not going into the 25-foot no alteration area. He's staying within the area that's kind of pretty much altered already. So just changing the configuration of the house. I don't have a problem with the modification or the extension.
Looks like it fits together there pretty well.
Yeah, let's hope that we can sell it. I mean, it's all about marketing. Got to be able to build something that somebody will.
Anything else on this?
That's it. Anyone else?
I have no questions.
All set.
Forward.
Nope, that's all right.
Okay.
That's it? I can go now?
Okay, so
No.
the vote on the minor modification Wall Street Development 8 Boyden Lane Lot 2 is minor modification.
Yeah.
You
I'll
wanna
accept a
just-
motion to that effect.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and do you want to issue a 1-year extension to construct this?
Yes. Accept the motion.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There's also a request for a 1-year extension for Lot 4 Boyden Lane, 315-1122. This is another lot at the very end of the cul-de-sac, which has not been constructed yet.
Is there any problem with that?
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Amy's going to get those. So there's also a request for an extension on Lot 5, Boyden Lane, 315-1123. Those are the two extensions. So that one is a house that is already being constructed, and I would like the applicant to tell the commission why he needs an extension.
But are people living in that house?
Yeah.
So they own it?
Yeah, they own it. Well, there's, we're waiting to get through the spring because that house was occupied, in June of this past year. So they've, there may be some regrading. They've indicated to me that there's a soft spot in the backyard that might require some re-looming and seeding. Not on near the slope, but in the backyard.
Yes, I saw it today.
Oh, you were
It's
there?
puddles.
Yeah.
It's in their backyard.
So it's better for us to keep the order or the notice open, or the order open, until we get a chance to go take a look at that. And then there's a few items, even though we've had an as-built done, there's a few items that we haven't put any plaques in or anything like that that marks out the 25. So it's not quite ready for certificate of compliance, but it's probably 90%.
So there's some regrading that you feel needs to be done, and right, the no alteration plaques are not in, and the slope may or may not be to the eye. It seems steeper, and the fill not quite where the minor modification requested it to be. And it slopes right down to the siltation fence, so that needs to be cleaned up and stabilized. Okay. So I suggest that the commission give them an extension until June. Do you think that June is enough time to complete those items?
Depends on the weather. Right now it's been raining and a very soft spring, so I would say August would be the very earliest, because you never know about the weather in May, June. Last year, we had all that rain, and you penalized me for that because I made a commitment of April 30th, and it rained all April. And
I know.
you penalized me.
I would say that these items have been out there for a while.
How can they be out there for a while? We had the discussion last April and May, and we just finished the looming and seeding in the summer of last year, so it hasn't even been a full season where the grass has had a chance to stabilize things.
Okay, well, what I would
The homeowners installed irrigation, and they reseeded the entire yard at their own expense, and that was in the fall, so it hasn't, we haven't even had one season yet, so I think it's to rush it. What's the sense in rushing it? What's the big deal?
So to give the applicant an extension to August to complete the items, well, and request a certificate of compliance. I mean, the lot's been sold. It's owned by another person. These items, I think, could have been addressed earlier, but if you want to give the applicant enough time, August, July, that's fine. But I think that
So
these
by
items need to be complete.
by our meeting in August, we have a meeting the second week of August, something like that. We have one meeting in August.
We usually have one meeting in
Yeah.
August.
I can tell you
So
what
by
day.
that August meeting,
August 12th.
Okay.
and at that meeting,
So give the extension to August 12th.
I'll accept a motion to that effect.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that everything that you have? I do believe it is.
Alright guys, I drafted this, so it's gonna have a year on it, but I can edit it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strange
Okay.
date. to-
Yep. Well, I think the order of conditions states, to request a certificate of compliance upon completion of the project. So, and you can request an extension if you have reasons to extend it. So that's why, and I know the grading and the cleaning up the erosion control line has been brought up multiple times, and you've known that you have put no alteration plaques out there from the beginning of the plan being issued. So all of those items have been known for a while, and we have had dry periods, so they could have been done. And so the ultimate is to get you in compliance with the order of conditions and get the people who now own the property a certificate of compliance.
Okay, well,
So-
let's see what we can do.
That's what we would like you to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
You rush. So,
Good night, Lou.
So the other certificates of compliance that are on the agenda, they're still pending stabilization. And
Well, if they haven't washed away by now, that's a good thing.
no, it's just the backyards and along the parking lot of the West Street. And there's nothing new on the notice of non-compliance. Those are sort of pending. The board comments, so the planning board has the 2020 town meeting articles. One is the parking overlay for South Walpole.
What is that?
That's to allow certain areas to be able to park for games.
Which areas?
In South Walpole.
I'm just trying to imagine which areas we're talking about. Is there like a map?
Yep.
It's south of North Walpole.
Is this school? A school parking lot?
I don't know.
Games? Some kind of sport event?
Well, there's this big stadium called Gillette Stadium. You ever heard of it? People park down.
So anyway, are we going to have a comment
and then
or not?
walk
Is
to
it
the
jurisdictional?
This is the planning
Yeah.
board requesting.
Oh, I thought you were familiar with that.
The
Yeah.
commission, if they have a comment or not.
I'm not familiar with
Let's
parking
see.
lot. I didn't realize there
Oh,
was
so the
people
Boyden
parking
School.
lots.
They
I
want to
thought
park at
people
the
just
Boyden
parked
School?
on the
So this
streets
is the
and
overlay.
Oh,
You can't
oh.
just say you can do it here, you can do that. You have to say, you know, an area,
So
an overlay.
parking can occur
People
anywhere
walk.
in this area?
Well, you have to go
People-
through a
some people do it in
process
their
through the
yards.
zoning
You
board.
get a permit from the selectmen, something,
Over
Gone down
So is,
to-
so is
to
it,
park 5 cars in your driveway.
Right.
I
It-
didn't realize
it's-
people parking in Walpole didn't make
Yeah, we had
You want to
one.
read it?
yeah.
It's at a shopping
No,
plaza.
because
but
it's
they,
tons of
there's a
wetlands
lot
there.
that
So is it
charge.
jurisdictional or not?
Came before us because it was wetlands, so
Okay.
they
I
built
mean,
a lot. just
So,
for
so
that
can-
sort of-
might
You
someone
can
be
con-
parking cars
I'm
on
not
their
sure what you-
lawn next to the river or something?
If
Or?
the commission has concerns, then yes, you can tell the planning board you have
So-
concerns. This would be an overlay district.
Yeah, so a
And then I think they
yeah.
still have to go through a process to get.
Okay, so if
the permit,
the
but I haven't fully
process
read
is
it.
that someone is going like, oh my goodness, I've got a small driveway, but I've got a gigantic lawn down to the river, and I'd love to put a bunch of cars on the lawn, I think that is jurisdictional for us. So, right, I mean, a pre-existing driveway that someone puts an extra car on is not.
So a comment like the Conservation Commission would be
Concerned about
concerned with
parking cars within the
Buffer zone,
within the buffer zone
Right.
to rivers, streams, and wetlands.
right.
So that
Of the-
could be an existing parking lot, though.
Is this for like people who want to park cars on their property?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
like we did a
It's
few
mainly
years.
for like the church.
Like there's a strip mall there, they could apply to park a dozen cars or something.
Yeah, well, like that lot that we did a few years ago by that shopping plaza. Remember they did that?
Yeah,
lot?
yeah.
Like that.
And they could apply for a permit to
Or the church
put
next to
half a
Jack's
dozen
house.
cars, or the church, or the school. The school could use it as a fundraiser to.
But they can park cars there anytime they want.
Right, so that's
So-
why, I mean, the parking lot could be in the buffer zone, so I don't.
You know what I mean? They park cars on Sundays.
So there's going to be a way to word it. What it is, what just has me concerned is you can park cars on grass. We've seen it before,
Okay, so-
right?
so
and,
you
and so
bring
and it's
that up
tempting.
and you
At
say
$50 a car, you might want to put a few
We have
on the lawn.
concerned about
Yeah.
parking cars on
Can I see that?
unpaved areas in the buffer zone. to-
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fair.
Unpaved
Something
areas.
like that.
Sure.
You know.
All set.
Do we have any problem with them parking in somebody's driveway? No, not really.
No,
If they
I can
want the
just see
inconvenience.
Do it now.
it's very lucrative. Yeah, sure, I mean, it's just lucrative, and so there's going to be temptations.
Yeah, there will be some people that park a few cars, but so what?
Sure.
If they want the inconvenience,
Yeah, we do it. we do
Okay,
it
so
now.
say that again, how you want it written?
the conservation has concern about parking cars on unpaved areas within the buffer zone
Right.
to river, brook, streams,
Areas.
and wetlands.
Right,
In the buffer zone
right,
or riverfront area.
right, because it's going to be a commercial enterprise. I mean, it is a money-making enterprise. If I lived down there, I'd be tempted to pick up a few hundred every week. So, there's got to be some sort of
Right,
yeah.
and there is a process, so the process is going.
But we should be included if it's in the buffer.
You know what gets tricky? Somebody has a big spread of lawn,
Yeah.
and say 90% of it's outside the buffer zone,
Yeah.
10% of it's the
It
lawn's
goes
in.
through different departments.
How do you going to flag the part of the lawn that's not to be used for parking?
I don't know, but step one is just to say we want in on it a little bit. That's all we're
So-
doing. I mean, we could say,
So
oh, it's not
it
our
goes
problem.
to.
I can see it getting a little
Can I
tricky there.
tell
in
you what it
dealing
does?
with the
What?
lawn.
Okay,
Right.
good,
You're not-
thanks.
Exactly.
A paved
So
parking lot's
it-
very well defined.
Right,
Any
right.
requests to park cars would also go to the various town departments for comment.
Good.
That
But
would
we
include
just want to
us.
reinforce, it's okay if we put something into words too, because they're going to be, putting.
Yeah,
things
there is a process. I don't think it's just because you're in the circle that you can
No,
park
you have to
cars.
apply for a
Right,
permit.
yeah. And the permits would be reviewed by the department. So we'll include comments to the planning board about parking
Yeah.
cars on unpaved areas in the buffer
Yeah.
zone or riverfront area. The commission is concerned with that. Okay, so the other one is for the Article 21, the inclusionary zoning article. Which is this, which I read over, and it's to include special provisions for affordable housing units.
Mhm.
So I don't think it would impact wetlands, Concom. But their hearing for these is April 2nd. So we have some time if we want to put these back on the agenda for next time, if you're so
Well, what kind of
concerned with something.
provisions for, I mean, it's
the whole bylaw, it's kinda
just for
complicated.
developers who want to do a project, let's say they have 12 units, they
Yeah.
have 2 affordable.
Yeah.
So making projects, some affordable housing to facilitate the 10% for the town to meet its goals. Okay.
Right.
If you did that, you wouldn't have like 400 unit projects coming in.
no, it's just that we have had affordable housing built right next to wetlands before, so I just,
Well, it would still come, any development would still, it doesn't circumvent the Wetlands Protection Act or anything like that. It was just, it would be that, say the 2 big developments here in town, when they came through, we didn't have an inclusionary zoning bylaw, so that there was no bylaw that said, okay, you're putting 350 units in it, you have to include some affordable units in that. This would say you do.
So if it doesn't meet the 20%, it wouldn't go under a 40B. It would still be a regular project.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It's just those 2. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
the sign.
The
special
sign,
permit?
yeah, I don't know. You want to explain that? Because I can find the paper.
Sure, so what they're proposing at 103 Providence Highway is a Norwood Urgent Care. There's already a sign structure from the Acura dealership. They're just proposing to put a sign in place of that bare structure. Same place, not changing anything.
Where the Acura dealership was.
Mhm. So if they're not changing anything outside the building, maybe they might reduce the parking lot, but that's okay.
Okay, so no comment to the ZBA in regards to that?
Did they ever build that little roadway that they wanted, remember?
No.
No.
Did it?
Well, we made pretty strict
Right, I remember that.
provisions there.
We walked it, I remember walking it there.
Yeah. And they built the new dealership down
No, it
in Westwood there.
Oh, Westwood, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so I think that concludes the regular agenda. I was just recommending that we go briefly into executive session to discuss the superseding order that was issued by DEP for Burns Ave. If the commission
Sure.
wants to do that.
I'll move that we do that.
Second?
Voice vote?
I'm okay with it.
Yes, aye.
Doug? Aye.
Okay.